Okay, hi everyone. So, as a financial planner, I help people figure out how to get the most out of their money through lowering taxes, investing smartly, and maximizing your equity comp and having a plan. But nothing fuels your financial independence like negotiating for higher compensation in the first place. And sometimes a 30-minute conversation can change the course of your financial life. And it is not just your salary that is up for negotiation. Equity comp, how many days you're in the office, going on an extended career break, all of these things are up for negotiation too. And just as a personal story, I was a couple of years into my career at one of the big tech companies in Silicon Valley. And I wanted to take a year off to travel around the world with my now wife and work on a passion project. And I assumed that I would have to quit if I wanted to travel around the world for a year. But a colleague actually convinced me that I might as well try to negotiate, which I was scared to do. But I prepared and I had the conversation. I was successful. So that was just a really huge lesson for me. But I know that as a woman, a person of color, as an LGBTQ individual, I get how negotiation can be an uncomfortable conversation when you're used to having to fight just to get a seat at the table. So that is why today I invited Kimberly Aguilera, founder of Zocalo, which is a recruiting firm guiding careers and helping clients build their businesses. And her focus is helping folks in marketing, communications, and product, and helping clients with candidates who are values aligned. So thank you, Kimberly, so much. Kimberly, well, just a little more intro for her. Kimberly is a recognized leader in the executive search space. She is a dedicated advocate for advancing communities of color and workforce equity. She is a hands-on matchmaker who understands the needs of both companies and candidates. And I love this fact. 85% of her placements to date have been filled by people of color, LGBTQ plus individuals, and members of other underrepresented groups, which is awesome. So thanks, Kimberly, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. Well, my first question I have is just like, why is it important for women, LGBTQ plus individuals, and people of color to negotiate?
It is important because I think a lot of us grow up with a certain way of taking like what we are offered. Like we're lucky to have what we have. We're all very much like a lot of us are first generation and very much are just like in the thankful, like we earned it, but that's good. Don't push, don't don't disrupt things. But when I got into executive recruiting, I was astonished by how much people asked for and how far they pushed it. And I just didn't know that this is actually the norm. And I have this like joke that it's like I tell people, I'm like, pretend like you're a white male. Like they ask for everything and they get it. And that's why people move up. So, I think like I always like wish for the stars and you'll get something like, in between. But if we don't ask, we'll never know. And then, everybody else is doing it.
I love that advice. Yes, think like a white male. I tell myself that sometimes too.
I have to as well. I'm like, no, 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 stand in your power. You
Yeah,
deserve this.
yeah, it's awesome. Okay, so imagine you are talking to a candidate who has gone through the interview rounds and is awaiting an offer, or maybe they've already gotten an offer. What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, congratulations. I think so many people rush through these processes or just are so stressed through the process of interviewing and getting to an offer. And I think we forget to like just celebrate our wins. Like getting an offer is tough, especially in this market. There's not a lot of big roles open and there's a lot of competition for them. So just, celebrate a little bit, be happy for yourself, like live in that for a moment. But also think about why you started your search in the first place, or maybe if you weren't searching, why you accepted the conversation. Just lean back on like what's important for you in the role. Make sure it's the right role, like the title, the leveling, all of that. And then in the offer, just remember where you are. Like remember when you set like this is my salary, want, where is it, how does it feel now? Because you can always say it, but like you don't ever actually know until like the offer's in your hands, you're reading through it, and you're like, how does it actually feel? Like if you started day one and you took this offer, would you feel like damn, I should have asked for something for more, or like, how am I ever going to grow from this level? So you really want to feel comfortable and set up, like celebrated in that offer. So think about all the things that are important: the base, your vacation days, like everything. Does it feel good? And you can actually push on all of it. So like, just think about like how it feels, what would feel a little better, and what wouldn't feel right. Because if the offer doesn't feel right, it's okay. You can say no. And sometimes, like I say, like in interviewing, it can also just validate where you are and that you want to stay. And that's not a bad thing. People do it. It happens. Yes, a lot of time energy goes into the search and it's unfortunate, but it's your life. It's not anybody else's life. It is, you have to live with this day to day. So if you say no, if you took the job and you would have regretted leaving that last place, because sometimes you have to think about where the company is. Is it about to IPO and you're really going to leave and leave things on the table, or, so you just have to think about it in a big decision. These are big decisions, like changing your job, buying a home, moving, choosing a partner. These are all your biggest decisions in life. So be really thoughtful with it and take your time. Like, don't feel pressured. You usually have about a week.
Okay, got it. That's helpful. Okay, so let's say I am this candidate, I've gotten an offer, and I'm like, I don't know, sounds okay. But I'm like, okay, I've just listened to Kimberly. She says I should just try to ask, okay, how would I know what to even ask for? Like, how would I know what the upper limit of what an offer should be to know what I should be trying to ask for, what I'm worth?
So I know that you have a global audience, but I'm a bit localized in San Francisco, New York, and LA. And both in California and New York, we now have, and just figure out your local laws, but we have to post the salary band on the job description now. And I believe it's like, yeah, so like where the company is based, of wherever they post it, they have to like put that salary band. So if it's a LA, California company, they have to post it for global roles as well. But so you can see on the job description now, it has to be on there. Typically, if it says there's about 10% above what's posted, for like to have some like wiggle room or negotiation room for big tech companies, and maybe even more. Sometimes with tech companies, there's just so much money in there, but it depends. So typically there's a little bit more, but I would really use your network to dig around, like anybody there, and just, you have to understand their leveling. So you have to know like, what level is it. Sometimes it's like the director, their number levels or whatever. Every company is different, and just try to get in there and get some info. You can use the internet to try to find. It's not always reliable, but like, that's why you should have a really good recruiter, because even if they didn't get you the job, a good recruiter will still say, yeah, of course, I'm going to help. We are gatekeepers. We have a lot of information. So we really want to help people advance. So we'll try to find the info for you. Like, for instance, I have a lot of recruiters inside tech companies, and I ask them, I'm like, hey, can you help me help this candidate? And people want people to advance. So I would just do due diligence using your network and trusted confidants in the industries, shared industries.
So, how
Unfortunately.
has the environment of compensation changed? We're in the last, I mean, especially now, right? We're talking about this at the end of 2023, going into 2024. And maybe you can talk about this from the standpoint of these mega tech companies, as well as maybe some of the smaller private, companies.
Yeah, so overall, I would say that the funny money is gone, but I should preface that I have moved away from like the huge tech companies, like working with like Apple and Meta, to, more private or VCs that are nonprofit. But I talk to people all the time, but I have this is what I do all day long. There was just really crazy money going around. But so it's changed. There's just less roles open. We've all seen the layoffs.
Mm.
I think the bands stay truer to where they are. They haven't lowered, but they haven't raised in the past 3 years. I don't believe, for the senior roles. And negotiating, you can still negotiate, because it hasn't really changed the negotiation tools, because actually it's hard. internal talent people are inundated with resumes now. So like when getting through like hundreds of resumes, it is a horrible job. It is so much. It is to go through them, and like, there's just the wrong people are applying. It really takes a lot of time. So like once you even get to the offer, it is a big thing. So they don't want to lose you. So, but I wouldn't use it in a untrustful way. But I would. You still have negotiating power at the offer stage, but yeah, there's just like they're not throwing money around, so there's less wiggle room on the money and more like you'd have to go for like vacation days or other things that are important to you, flexibility in the workplace. But even I do see most companies increasing days in office if they already have a hybrid working schedule.
Okay, that's helpful to know. I don't know if
Yeah.
you have any idea, like what is the standard, do you think, in terms of the number of days of office if it's a hybrid?
2 to 3, yeah, and then I'm hearing 3 to 4.
Doesn't sound very hybrid-y
um,
anymore.
I know. And even I have one big VC that they were very much completely remote, but now they're hiring around their HQs and really want people in office. So, I mean, there are the tech companies that are completely remote that I haven't heard that changing, but yeah, I've even like, Meta over here in New York is asking people to get in a bit more often.
Yeah, I'm sure. When you're negotiating, how should you think about cash versus equity?
So this is very individualized. I think at a certain point in my life, I could have been like all equity, and taken a very, very low base and just been like, oh, this is it. Like, I really believe that the equity is going to pay off here. And now I have 2 kids. I would never take the equity. I'd be like, I need I need the base. So you just have to make sure that I would talk to your accountant, your financial advisor, and get some, that's why Jenny's here, and really figure out like where is no, seriously, but like where can you flex and where can't you, and what does this look like in the long term, and like what is really understanding what the upside is. I think a lot of people have this idea that, oh, equity, equity, equity. But you know what? Billion times zero is zero. So like we all have learned that, and the equity piece has really hurt a lot of people in the past years. So I just understand like the benefits and the risks, and make a decision that's right for you, but get advice. And I think if people can see like this whole thing is like, get advice. Like, like athletes have like trainers for like 5 days a week. Like we all are professionals and need a lot of resource and support. So that's why there are a lot of professionals out there that can help us.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I agree. Especially on this one. This is so important, like trying to figure out how to get how much to get paid. When it comes to equity and cash, would it be true to say that there's usually more flexibility to negotiate on the equity side, or is that not true?
I think there is, especially for senior roles. Yeah, I think there is. It seems like that's the trend, especially when with cash being a little bit tighter.
Yeah, makes sense. About negotiating. So if you were actually going to, well, I'm sure you have coached people. What do you actually say? Like, how do you even enter this conversation? In a way that, like, obviously, it's a sensitive balance. Whether you're trying to negotiate a new job or you're trying to negotiate a raise in a current job, you also don't want to piss off the people that you're talking to, right? And you want to be respectful.
Yes.
How would you advise to even approach this conversation? Like, what would be the script? Like,
Yeah. Well, so always be very thankful of like the offer, and say that, when you get the offer, be very thankful and just say like, hey, this is a big decision for me. Please give me, some time. I'll come back to you with my thoughts, and set it up that way. So you buy yourself some time. And then like, say, for example, you have an offer, I'll just make it sort of in the middle, like 200K, and it comes in at 200, and you really wanted 225, you can ask. I've seen people ask for like 275 from 200 and get 250, and like that blew my mind. I'm like, 275 from 200, that's so far away, you know. And it was clear, like everything was like clear up front, but I'm telling you, people ask for a lot. So, you know, you can, that's why I say like sort of shoot for the stars without turning them off. It's nice to have recruiters do it because we can like be like, hey, you know, we know how to like have these like middle people conversations. But if you're doing it on your own, I would just say like, hey, I would absolutely take this at 275. Is there, you know, how does that feel for you? I don't want to make this feel unfair or I'm ungrateful, but now I'm really having the offer to be able to run all the numbers, considering the benefits of where I'm at and where I'll be, blah, blah, blah. You can make a nice, you know, play for it and then see where they come. And then also vacation, I think like 4 weeks is for executives is minimum now. And then most companies also have like, you know, Christmas to New Year's off or some other, you know, like summer Fridays still happens at a lot of organizations. The equity piece and like the vesting piece I've seen be, you know, like zero, like 1 week, you know, especially for on the tech side, like engineers, that because they just like the money got really, really funny for them. They were just making like those offers were huge and there was just nowhere to go with them except you're like, okay, well, you're like vesting, your vesting schedule is right down. What else? Yeah, I would just put it all together and just make like a nice note, you know, just like without, you know, making it feel like you're being really greedy. And just say like, hey, how does this feel to you? Let me know, we can talk live or something like that to really like take it on down. And then there's usually negotiation. They're going to meet you somewhere.
That's
Or if they're not going to move anything, say, can we write in a 3-month review tied to salary?
okay.
So if you're crushing it in 3 months and you put some measurable pieces in there, then say like I want to like percentage 10-20% increase in that 3 months if it's really something, and see how they go there. It usually they have to write it, you know, they'll write it in, but you have to like usually chase in 3 months and be like, hey, can I get this review? You know, if it's not something they're set up for.
Yeah. That's a good idea though. It's kind of out of the box idea to try to
Yeah.
get something to happen.
If you really want it. It's also like, you know, every situation is so different. So yes, there is a script, but like each one is just so different, you know, especially for executive roles.
And when you say like, so if we talk about, I don't know if negotiation, how it differs if we're talking about, say, somebody who's 5 years out in their career versus somebody who's 15 years of experience versus somebody who's like at kind of the most senior levels, VP and above. Like, how does the negotiation differ for these three, for these, let's just bucket them into three parts of your career?
I think there's less negotiation when you get to when you're very, very senior because those packages are just huge. And I think like there's more back and forth, you know, in the first two. Because once you're very senior, you just like ask for it or they give you like a big package. I once placed a CMO at Gap and I was like, oh, well, this package seems like very nice, you know. And there was no negotiation. I think maybe there was more for the relocation that they asked for, and that was like fine, which was like another 10K, which is, you know, there's just like a lot of money. But at when you're first negotiating, when you first start to be like director level and above, yeah, there is a lot of back and forth. But I think that's just part of it. You learn like, you know, how to communicate, how to manage up, like, you know, how to ask for what you want and figure out a way to get it and like really use your network.
I love that. What about negotiating in a current job? So let's say you are working in you're okay with your job and you find out through back channels that your colleague over there is getting paid 20%, 50, like, oh, significantly more. I don't know, whatever, 10% more, whatever it is. Somehow you figure this out, right? And now you're like, wait a minute, I could be worth more. How would you approach like an internal negotiation?
Well, you have to figure out what your schedule is inside. So, figure that out and like make sure you're asking at the right time without like coming about it like out of left field and be like, hey, I heard that, Jenny's making X. But like figure out when there's usually like 2 times a year in a company that we review salaries, and really make your case and really start to work towards like having case studies or examples, or like examples of your work, and check in with like your manager or whoever is like tracking your work to make sure that you can like point to all these things, because you don't want them to take you don't want to like come after something if you're not in good standing, because they're gonna be like, they're really gonna put the spotlight on you and be like, well, looks like you haven't performed on this and this and this. It really puts a spotlight on you. So make sure that you're ready to. And yes, you're asking for money, but they're gonna go straight to your work, and that's where that leads to. But I think you should just say like, hey, I believe that we are equitable workplace, and this is where I want to be, and know that others are at this level, and how can we get there, and when can we get there.
I
And
love that
it's just
language.
as easy as that. It's just not, and then like yes, put them and be like, are you, oh, so you're saying we're not equitable, so like, you really have to like use use their corporate
Yeah.
jargon on them, and hopefully it would be, fair. But if it's not, then you would have to talk to HR and move it from there and make a case for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I love that too. I think the way you said it feels fair and reasonable, because you're asking them,
Yes.
what do I, if it like I feel like it's equitable, what do I have to do to get there? And it kind of puts the onus to have this conversation. And then if you deliver, they also need to deliver. If I was a
Yeah,
manager
exactly.
and someone said this to me, I'd be like, okay, like this is actually a pro both ways, right? They get more out of you and you get more out of them.
Right.
Cool. How is negotiation different, if at all, in public versus private companies?
So in public companies, there, just go back to that, there can be a lot of resource, there can be a lot of cash. In private, you're mostly, remember I was like, okay, there's usually some wiggle room on the salary ranges. In private and nonprofit, there's no wiggle room, and they're so honest. So I told my like nonprofits, I'm like, actually, don't put the real range. You got to leave some room. I mean, because like you don't want the people to know the exact actual range, but they're just so equitable that, and they're just like, this is where it is. But yeah, so there's not going to be any movement on the top salary range in a private company, most likely, that they post. And also, they usually, if they're a private, very equitable company, they're never going to offer you the top of the range, because they're like, this is the range for this role, and like you'll probably be in this role a year or two, so they want you to have room to grow. So they want you to make up some of that money in that range. So it's also a bit shocking for candidates, because they're used to like just having a lot of room on the money, on the salary range. In public companies, like, I don't know, those ranges are just probably all over the place, and they just don't want to lose people, and they throw money at people to keep them, so the range like gets completely skewed. In private, they really stick to them. And then in public, you have the equity piece, and you're not going to have that in private, or or maybe there's something else like a bonus pool. And then bonuses or something that can exist in both, along at what, plus equity, plus base. So there's like a lot of levers
Hmm.
in public.
Got it. Cool.
And they'll have big benefit packages, so like they can cover all your transportation, they can cover some food, they can cover home office. And in private, you're not going to get that, or like continuing education, all those sort of things.
Yeah.
Or they may, and you can just like ask for it,
Right.
just, it's always, you never know until you ask, type of thing.
Right. Yeah. That's helpful. What do you do if you are in a fortunate position, you're hot stuff, and now you've received multiple offers? Should you tell people this? How can you use that for your advantage?
Absolutely. Always tell, actually, from the start of your interviewing process at each company, you should say, I'm actively interviewing. So this tracks to them that they may have to pivot or react if things like heat up on your other roles. And this should definitely be communicated. It actually is. It looks bad and is taken, a bit offensive. They're like, "Oh, I already have another offer," and you're like, "What? I didn't know. I could have like staggered all this and set this up better for you." So the more open that you can be with communication about where you are with interviewing up front is very helpful. And if you end up getting multiple offers all at one time, congratulations, you're a rock star. And I would go same thing. Go, tell everybody you have you have the offers. And usually sometimes it just depends. You can get one offer, tell people you have offers, and then like people, all their authorizations they have to go through. Sometimes they'll take a week to get your offer and you don't have enough time to like really put them all side by side. So really start thinking through the offers as you get them. Communicate to other places that you have the offers, but sometimes you only have like one day to think through all three or however many one you get at a time. But go back to like I said, what's important for you. Look at the offers. If it's like 200, 205, 225, but is that 25 grand, but you're kind of, your quality of life is going to be down. It's just what is important for you. You're going to have a little bit more flexibility. Are you going to be managing people? Are you not going to be, you just have to like take all the pieces and go back to what was important to you at the start of your search and see where they all fill. And sometimes it can just be so easy as like, I want to take the highest offer. Or maybe like this one, I don't have to go to the office and that's more valuable to me. And maybe negotiate all of them. You should, you should. And don't feel bad about it. And yeah, just lean into it. Because if more than one company wants you, you obviously have a lot of negotiation power, but just don't do it with humility, know, and with grace. And that just goes the longest way,
Yeah.
I think humble empowerment.
What I have a question actually I often will work with folks who have kind of maybe non-conventional career paths. Maybe they have taken extended career breaks. Maybe they've taken time off to care for family. So let's say you're talking to somebody who worked for 15 years and then took 5 years off. And now they're like, my kids are grown and now can, make it to school by themselves and I want to go back to work, but they've been out for 5 years. What would you suggest they do to even begin?
Well, I'm glad that they're back, and I don't think that they should feel bad about being away or feel like on the back foot because it happens. A lot of things happen in life, and I think that whoever is going to hire you should understand this. And if you feel on the back foot and judged for it, not the environment for you, first of all. So you don't want to be in a place like that is not going to accept that. But I would try to get back in it mentally. You don't want to go back into it and being like, oh, my family, my kids, and like you have to get back into that work mode. And yes, you should be able to talk about your family and your kids, but probably not in like the first interview and like your first 10 questions. You shouldn't say like, I need to do pickup at 2:30, like let's get to the offer and then like, put that in, but make sure you're prepared mentally to be there. Like, do you remember how it is going back into a full-time job? Is that really what you want? And if it is, then get back into that frame of mind, especially when you're searching and really thinking about like, what am I good at? Where do I want to do this? What can I commit to? And how can we, like what feels right? And maybe even do like a little bit of coaching, professional coaching, get your hype people in your life and make sure that like they're helping you, you feel ready for it and pumped to be there. And then the way that you do not have to go too much into like why you took your time off. And if someone's going to ask you too much about it, like, you don't have to explain it. That's like your info. It doesn't take away the 15 years of experience that you've had. But I would just like get back into the industry, whatever, like reading trades, podcasts. There's just like talking to people. But, it all hasn't turned up. So AI isn't doing everything for us yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just curious too, like just on this note, because I have a friend who's kind of going through this, but like you kind of maybe left a field that you're like, ah, it was okay, but I don't even know if I want to go back. Like I feel like a lot of the struggle of folks who have left for a while is they're not even sure what they
Where to
want to do.
start?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Well, then I think so. Then it's like really, then you should do some professional coaching because that's where these people are really trained to figure out like what's important. I do a little bit in recruiting, but mostly people are on a path. But I have worked with people that are getting back into the workforce as well. But it's really thinking about like, hey, if you're a mom, you're a project manager, you're a
yeah.
logistical expert, you're a traffic, you know, you can do all of these things, but like do you want to do that like not outside of your family? You know, it doesn't mean it's just I think it would really think about like what are you passionate about? What are you good at? Where do you think you can add value? Because you really want to be adding value wherever you go. I think the more senior that we get, we want to make sure that we're making an impact, that our work means something, that, you know, we're leaving some sort of legacy behind in our professional life. So really thinking about where that might work. Like, you know, if you're a mom coming back to work and you are coming out of this expertise of being a young parent mom, like or parent, you can go into like honest, you know, like there's so many companies that hire, you know, experts in the childcare industry or so, you know, there's lots of jobs. I have lots of moms that'll be like, "Hey, do you work with this company? It's like a you know, like Melissa and Doug." And I'm like, "Oh, I do know someone there. You know, I can help you with that." But yeah, there's you know lots of ways to discover you know companies or opportunities that might exist that you didn't know about.
Yes. Can you talk a bit about like what you do, how you help people, and just like even the different kinds of like you mentioned career coaches. Like if somebody
Uh-huh.
doesn't even know what resource like what kind of resources are out there to help folks in this negotiation job finding process.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an executive recruiter at the core. So I work with companies. I get paid by companies to be a external recruiter expert that comes in and helps them on senior roles where like their current recruiters don't have the expertise in marketing, communications, or product, or they have some expertise, but they just are overworked and they just have too much on. So I come in and help. So I curate a network constantly of executives in those three areas and a little bit beyond. And also, like, just through working with talent, like, you end up being like a coach or a confidant. So I will always make sure when I talk to people, I always get to know them at the core of who they are because it's the little things that people mention and it just like really impacts like, oh, actually, there was someone that loved urban farming, and then there's like actually a marketing role at an urban farm, you know, or something like wild stuff happens. But I just want to know all those things, you know,
Yeah.
because like really mixing passions with your professional experiences, that's like real magic.
Mhm.
But now there's a whole agricultural tech world that is out there that's beautiful. But also, I get to know people so well that they often call me like, hey, Kimberly, I have this job offer. I know it's not through you, but can you coach me through it? And I will do that. So I have a flat fee where I'll charge to go through the offer stage with someone. And usually it entails 3 calls. So, like, I get called when the offer is received or close to being received, and I do that like exercise of like, okay, where are we at financially? What's important to you? We do that whole like very detailed exercise. Then, you know, I will help them like get to a point of like go back and ask for this. This is how you can ask for it. Sometimes I'll even write it and they can edit. And then they'll come back to me if it didn't, you know, like where we are and there's up to 3 calls and, you know, hey, it's a very nominal fee of $250, and you know you can make tens of thousands more. So it's just one of those things that you just need an expert to weigh in, and I'll lean on my network of other recruiters and executives that have intel that we can use to get that offer up.
That's great. That's a great resource. It's like hugely
Yeah,
valuable. So
it is. It is. I wish I had
I
it,
know. I was like,
and you
why
know,
didn't I have this when I was trying to negotiate? Thank you, Kimberly, so much because when I found out, first of all, I didn't know there were people like you who could help in negotiations. So I've been referring you to clients, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is great. Like, it is so. important. I think just having an objective person who knows, like you said, marketing, product, communications, that's like like covers a lot. Like to know that
Yeah.
you would know kind of what is out there is hugely valuable. And I think would give
Yeah, that's
somebody the
right.
confidence that like, oh, I can ask for this, whatever it is that they're
Yeah,
seeking.
that's right. And then, like I said, like when you realize the power you have at your fingertips, like recruiters have a lot of info,
Hmm.
and we work on, especially executive recruiters, we're working on 1 to 5 roles at a time. So it's very, very concentrated and focused. So like I have a lot of info that I'm not using all the time. So I'm very happy to help with negotiations and just answer questions and give out this info and spread it around because like throughout my career I've gotten so many times, especially from underrepresented candidates, like no one ever told me this before. Oh my
Yeah.
god, you doubled my salary. I'm like, what? This is not even, are you freaking, and it just hit me that I was like, why aren't other recruiters doing this?
Yeah.
But you need representation at the top, and that's what I'm here to make impact as much as I can.
That is awesome.
So
Have a good day.
have a nice
Thank you so much
evening.
for doing this. Ciao. Bye.